Welcome back, everybody. How's it going? This is the last, I don't want to say the last, but for now, this is the last thing I have for goat decks that I was building. This is the Ocean Dragon Lord Daedalus. This was the other structure deck that came out with the Infernal Flame Emperor, which I already did a deck profile on. These are very nostalgic decks to me and my brother when we played, so figured to pick up the other one too. This deck is very It's not great. It's a very gimmicky deck. If you're looking for something a little more consistent, the Infernal Flame Emperor and the Ultimate Insect one that I put out feel like they do, a lot more consistently. But this is kind of you could potentially blow your opponent out in one turn, and that just steals the game. It doesn't happen often, but I've gotten it off once and twice, and it's very fun. So I'm just going to go ahead and get into it. So the boss monster is the Ocean Dragon Lord Neo Daedalus. Now, this version I have is the original one, so it doesn't have the correct text. So the first line of text on it should be, you cannot normal or set this. You can only special summon this by sacrificing the original Daedalus uh, to special summon this card. And then when this card is summoned, you can get rid of Umi on the field, which is a field spell, and your hand, everything else on your field, and then everything in your opponent's hand and their field gets sent to graveyard. So this is a big game resetter. In a format where Fiber Jar doesn't exist, this kind of just resets the game completely, and it puts your opponent into a top deck war. Um, yeah, if you actually get to resolve this 9 times out of 10, you are winning the game unless your opponent top decks like a Chaos Sorcerer or BLS. But otherwise, not a lot of decks can come back from that. And then the card that goes with it is the oh gosh, what was his name again? Leviathan Dragon, uh, Daedalus. So he's normally just used as tribute fodder to get into this, but if you can get into him and you don't have this, but you have Umi on your field, he is a board nuke by tributing the Umi, which is really good. So you're not technically screwed if you don't get to this, but if you get to this, I feel like you're almost guaranteed to win. Whereas this, like your opponent sets up things like level limit area Bs, stuff like that, or even if they just have a lot of like annoying stuff on board, this kind of clears it. So that is the sort of main boss monsters of the deck. Uh, like I said, it's a very kind of sacky deck, very gimmicky, but it is a lot of fun if you get the chance to play it. Also very cheap too. So how do we get into these big boys? So we need to have at least one tribute because Legendary Ocean is our Umi spell. So to ensure that we have monsters on board, we have 3 copies of Mother Grizzly. Mother Grizzly is just a recruiter. It grabs a water monster from deck when it's destroyed by battle with 1500 or less. The best target to grab is Revival Slime or Revival Jam, not Slime. He looks like a slime though. So if he's destroyed by battle and sent to the grave, you can pay 1,000, and during your next standby phase, you special summon him. So that gets you a guaranteed body out for uh, one tribute to go into this, which is very nice. But we do have one other way in case, like, your opponent just doesn't let you have uh, the destroyed by battle effects, which is, oh gosh, what was her name? Aqua Spirit. So Aqua Spirit, if you remember from the fire deck, is the water version of Spirit of the Flames, but I believe she gets extra attacks. Oh no, she changes opponents' battle positions, and they can't change during the next turn. That effect's never come up, obviously, because she's just been tributed over, but you can do that other effect. But basically, banish a water from your graveyard, special summon her from hand. It's just a little extender. It's very nice. She swings for 19 on Legendary Ocean if you don't have the tribute fodder in hand, but normally you should have it just going through the deck. So that is it for those. Our random I'll say like kind of meta choices. Abyss Soldier. The reason Abyss Soldier is really good in this deck is any extra cards like if you draw like two copies of the big Neo Daedalus and you're like, well, I can't even get to him right now. You can discard this because it's a water monster, and then target a card on the field, return it to the hand. It's a very free effect. He is also 1800, which is really nice. Tribe Infecting Virus is really good too. He's also a water, so he gets the buff under the Legendary Ocean. Um, and he's helps you clear against kind of annoying things, maybe like Gravekeepers, because most of them are spellcasters. And a Sinister Serpent is also, it's a good generic water monster that works very well for this deck. The last two kind of techie spots, the good spots, one copy of Sangan and one copy of Magician of Faith. So in a deck like this, even though I'm a big fan of Morphing Jar, I like Morphing Jar a lot. I like Cyber Jar a lot. You don't want to run them in this deck just for the off chance that you're giving your opponent a hand after you potentially rip it with Neo Daedalus, this little guy. So I don't recommend running those. The nice thing is, Magician of Faith is going to grab back your spell cards when it's flipped face up, so you can grab your Pot of Greeds back. You can grab a lot of things back with it, which is really good. Or your Legendary Oceans, very important. Sangan can search for a lot of things in the deck, but I think the most important thing it can search out for is the Sinister Serpent. Sinister Serpent, if it's in your graveyard during the standby, comes back every turn to your hand. So even if you sort of nuke both players' hands, if he's in your hand and after you use, or sorry, if he's in your hand when you use Neo Daedalus, during your next standby phase, you're going to get that Sinister Servant back. Now you have two cards over your opponent's one, which is kind of nice, provided he's not like a big beater. He's like 300 attack, so it's not super great, but he's at least a body you can set face down if you need, uh, you know, something to fall back on. Always good to have. So the big star is Legendary Ocean. This counts as Umi, which is very important, but also it gives your waters 300 attack and 300 defense, and then they all cost one less tribute. So the uh, the original Daedalus is only one tribute now because he's a 7 star. That is very nice. So we want to you want to max out on this one because both cards need it on the field, but two, it's just a way to get out your biggest guys the quickest that you can. So absolutely play 3 of that, and then because we really want to see it, 2 terraforming. It's very important you see it. The deck kind of doesn't pop off if you don't. So playing 5 copies of it feels pretty good. The one Pot of Greed's great. Graceful Charity is good. We're playing Premature Burial. Premature Burial is really good because uh, in this deck, one, you can obviously bring something back if you need to go into the line of tributing for Daedalus and then going into Neo Daedalus. I think I'm going to say that way too many times in this. But you could also target Daedalus to bring him back. Like if he gets discarded, you could like discard him off of Graceful Charity, and then you could go straight into this, which is really nice. So it has a lot of versatility in this deck. I mean, it's at 1 for a reason in this format. And 1 copy of Snatch Steal. These are like our power 1-ofs. I mean, we do have like 1 power 1-of trap, but this these are kind of like the best things we could run. Heavy Storm and Mystical Space Typhoon I do not run just for the reason that I am playing 3 copies of Giant Trunade. So the important thing about Giant Trunade in this deck versus like other decks is Neo Daedalus rips both players' hands, like completely destroys it. So there's no real reason to play something like Heavy Storm because activating this alone bounces everything back to hand. You're going to get rid of it either way. So I think it's just more of a power card in this deck, which is also why you don't see me running something like Delinquent Duo. And then another very important card is 3 copies of Brain Control. Because again, we need something on board to tribute, to go into Daedalus, to go into Neo Daedalus. So taking your opponent's stuff is sometimes the best way to go about it. And then the last little bit of consistency is Upstart Goblin. Give your opponent 1,000 to draw a card. We're basically playing a 38 card deck with that, so it's kind of nice. I mean, if you want to count the pot of greed too, it's like a 36 card deck, I want to say. But yeah, there's really like if you find something else that you want to play in this slot, you can go ahead and do it. I think this is really solid as is, so I'm not gonna bother changing it. We don't mind giving our opponent life points because we're just gonna be beating over them. So one copy of Torrential Tribute. If all things go wrong and you are afraid of your opponent starting to amass a big board, Torrential Tribute, get everything out of there. It's just a board clear. Um, and we make that work. And then with a similar logic to running Giant Trunade, we have 3 copies of Compulsory Evacuation Device. Return a monster on the field back to hand. You can use this on your monster sometime, but like normally, like if your opponent has something crazy, like I don't know, like they normal or they special summon their BLS, you can just bounce it back to hand, get it out of there. Next turn, you can go into the Daedalus line, and that rips it out of the hand. Um, like I said, we don't need things like uh, you don't really need like a Mirror Force or anything that'll destroy the monsters because the boss monster of the deck will just get rid of everything for you. So that is it for the deck. I tried not to spend too long on it, but because it's a very simple deck, it's basically we resolve this, we win the game. If we don't resolve it, we don't win the game. Uh, the only card I have, there's a couple cards I've seen that could go in this deck, but I didn't really care to include them. Ring of Destruction was one. I feel like I should have included Ring of Destruction, but I feel like the Torrential's just fine because sometimes you don't want to damage yourself too much. And then there's a card called Heavy Slump. It's a continuous, and it's during your standby phase. You shuffle level 7 or higher from your hand to your deck, and you draw a new card. It's kind of good. Basically, if you break on multiple things, multiple of this and multiple of this, it kind of fixes it. But the big thing that I have tried while constructing this deck is I've tried to make sure that when you get to the part where the field is just Neo Daedalus, you're in top deck mode too. Like your opponent's in top deck mode, but you're in top deck mode too, right? Even if you have this 2900 thing, they just have to top deck Smashing Ground and pass, right? Like that clears this. So your top decks should feel like they're very decent cards. So I've tried to include as many like non-bricks as I can, and I feel like if you top deck Heavy Slump when you're on top decking wars, you just lose too much value. You're out of there. Whereas like if you top deck something like Upstart, you have another chance to get to a better card in your deck. So that's at least the direction that I took the deck. I think it works out fine. I don't think it's the deck of all time in Go format, but it does feel like if you wanted to goof off with something fun and cheap, this is one of the decks to try it with. So that's going to be it for this one. I'm working on things for Edison currently because I don't know if there's anything else in Goat that I really care for. If there is, I'll obviously put something out, but for the most part, I think between these 3 decks, that's pretty much like my Goat decks in, uh, you know, the Goat decks I enjoy. So next is on to things like Edison and stuff like that. Be sure to subscribe if you want to see, uh, whatever I feel like posting, right? All right, have a good day, guys.